150 riders still in the Giro. Everybody starting today. And a breakaway, getting away, in fact, after only 34 kilometres. Number of attacks. And at the Inter-Giro, it was Daniela Righi taking it from the Australian Russell Van Hout, and Mario Sciria in third place, and the fourth place rider in the breakaway, Giancarlo Ginestri of Tenax. And they are the four riders. They got away at 34 kilometres, and at the moment they've had a maximum lead of 10 minutes 30 seconds. It's come back to around about 4.5, 5 minutes now.
I think the team of Alessandro Petacchi being very clever and cagey in the press conference yesterday after his win, saying that they weren't going to ride their hearts out to chase every breakaway down in the Giro d'Italia. If somebody else wanted to win stages, then they needed to come to the front and do a little bit of work as well. This was still a little bit earlier on in the day, Immagini Registrata, and that was recorded images from the early part of the stage. There is the man who now has won 7 stages of the Giro d'Italia, though to add to his 6 stage wins of last year. And today, the stage really should suit him, with the chance of him getting a win number 8.
Well, it's a lovely finish for him in San Vendemiano, but the question of whether he will be there, leading them out. There's the stats for you. 169 started in Genova, 159 of the 19 teams still intact. It's been a very good race as far as dropouts are concerned, because we've had very few indeed. Next few days might change though, because from tomorrow we have a rough ride to Milan. And we are hearing reports, Paul, that the Gavia on the penultimate day is currently blocked with snow.
It's a big problem for the race organisation. Yes, the Gavia Pass is still blocked with snow, and there are rumours that what the race organisation might do, just to keep the big high mountains in, is put the climb of the Motorillo in on 2 occasions on 2 separate days. I think if they were doing that, it would be possibly to try and tilt the advantage across to Gilberto Simoni, because if they took out that big stage of the Gavia Pass, then this race is certainly lending itself over towards the advantage of Jaroslav Popovic.
Yeah, that's right. So there's the field all together, the tail of the group, as they say, as they're winding away into the distance here. We've been through Slovenia. We're now coursing through the streets of Italy. We also passed through Trieste, where we were a couple of days ago, passed through that lovely city, and we're now heading round the top of the bay, staying pretty close. We go slightly inland away from the Adriatic. San Vendemiano is where we're bound, and the lead 4 minutes 50 as we head towards the last 70 kilometres. We'll take our first break. Come and join us shortly.
The 2004 Giro d'Italia on OLN is brought to you by Tag Heuer. What are you made of? And by Trek, the 5-time champion.
And welcome back to the live coverage of the Giro d'Italia today. Phil Liggett here with Paul Sherwen, and we're looking at San Vendemiano is the destination. 69 kilometres to go. These 4 riders, Mario Sciria, Russell Van Hout, Daniela Righi and Giancarlo Ginestri, getting away at around 34 kilometres today. And as we watch the images here, I think we can welcome a young man who's part of the Fassa Bortolo team, and he is an American from Durango, Tom Danielson. Can you hear us, Tom?
I can.
Oh, and you're loud and clear to us. Tom, I suspect you're a little bit disappointed because the team didn't put you into the Giro this year, but there was a reason for that, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not too disappointed. The only disappointment comes from, it's a great experience, and right now that's the thing I need, but the team is really focused. They needed Petacchi to win as many stages, and with Frigo being sick, they built the team around Petacchi, and obviously it was a good decision.
Tom, it's good to hear your voice. It's been a long time since we saw you in the Tour of Langkawi. This is Paul speaking. We've seemed to get the impression that Alessandro Petacchi is a much more approachable champion than, say, Mario Cipollini, who seems to be a little bit of a prima donna sometimes.
Yeah, you're dead on with that comment for sure. I mean, when I first went to the first training camp, when I met him, I was nervous to meet him, along with my other teammates, but for sure him, he's such a big rider. And when I first met him, I was kind of like, that's it, because you see Lance Armstrong and you see Cipollini, and there's just this huge hoorah that sort of follows him around. And Petacchi, he just sort of dresses like a normal guy. He acts like a normal guy at the dinner table. He really doesn't say anything. He just smiles. He listens to what everyone has to say, and when he speaks, it's well thought out, and he's just an amazing character. I tell Kristen, my fiance, and all my friends, I say, you almost be disappointed when you meet him because he doesn't act like the rock star that he is.
Well, Tom, I think the team has also changed. I know you were excluded from the Giro team because of the sickness that Dario Frigo underwent. But after around about stage 5 or 6, I felt that the team suddenly started to click into being the big lead-out team for him. There were a few mistakes in the early stages, but since then they've made some very clever moves, you know, with the rider moving off and just leaving enough room for Alessandro Petacchi to come through in the sprint. Do you think that it's suddenly clicked that the team is a lead-out team for a sprinter rather than a team looking at GC?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the guys that are there, you have 3 or 4 guys, Codol, Cioni, Bruzigen, and Gustav, that are strictly for riding on the front to bring the race back together for the end. And then you have the lead-out train of Sacchi, Ancarato, and the rest of the guys that are just there for the lead-out. And you can see that they're well-oiled at this point in the race, and they're doing such a great job that what they were brought there to do is now exactly what they're doing. And like you said, they made some mistakes early on, but I think it was just the high pressure and knowing that Petacchi was going to win the stage, and it was up to them. If they made a mistake, that would be the reason why he didn't win the stage. And you can see that the pressure's behind him, and they're doing such a great job.
Do you think he'll get the outright record of 8 wins since the big wars, Tom, this week?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm hoping today that's when it's going to happen, but if not, I think there's one or two more. I think there's one more sprint stage left after today, right?
Yeah, I think this day actually after the rest day is a day that he might have a chance to come out because it's not that difficult, but he's certainly going to have a hard time in the mountains. And the team too, I've been very impressed with Dario Cioni, because not only has he been riding like a Trojan on the front, but he's still well up in the overall classification.
Yeah, it just goes to show you the motivation of the team first off. I mean, Cioni came to Romandy and rode a fantastic Romandy and showed that he can ride for GC. And then he did a fantastic prologue, and from then on he was in a position, I think, to challenge for the podium. But because there was so much pressure on Petacchi, the team sort of instructed him to okay, you can do what you want in the mountains, but then you also have to ride on the front. And you can see his strength. He rides on the front all day, every day. He's the last guy left that was riding tempo before the lead-out train, always. And then in the mountain days, he stays with the lead group almost to the end.
Yeah. Now,
I think had he not been riding on tempo so much between the mountain stages, I think he could be on the podium for sure.
Who's going to win the Tour, Tom?
I don't know. I mean, I think from what I'm seeing, I think Simoni, but I think Popovic with his time trial, I think it's going to be a race. I think it'll be very exciting for all the viewers because Simoni's going to have to attack now, but I think there's 4 really hard mountain stages, and without those stages, I think Popovic would be the champion. But because of those stages, and there's no place to hide, I think Simoni.
One last question, Tom. What about yourself? Are you enjoying life in Italy?
Absolutely. It's such a beautiful country, beautiful people. The training is unbelievable, and the races are incredible. And not just Italy, but all of Europe. It's such a new level. It's the real deal, you know.
Next year,
what
Tom,
people always have dreamed about. It's incredible.
Next year we're going to be commentating on you in the Giro, right?
I hope so, but you guys are doing the Vuelta, right? This year?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's my race now.
All right. Tom, you keep training, mate, because we want to commentate. You had a great ride when we were last with you, as Paul said, in the Tour de Langkawi, and you were riding for Saturn then. Now, of course, you've got your big chance with a great team. Very best of luck, Tom, and thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you. It's great talking to you guys, and I miss my outdoor life coverage over here for sure.
Well, a lot of people are watching, Tom, so you'll be remembered, and we'll give your best to Durango.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, speak to you again soon. Thanks very much. Tom Danielson there, resting after a morning's training. He's now watching the Giro d'Italia on television in Italy, and he's watching these 4 riders who are still clear, 34 kilometres covered. And Tom's got a great deal of talent, Paul, and he's only 26.
fabulous bike rider. The first time we saw him come to the fore was at the Tour de Langkawi, where he was a very dominant winner, and that's when he was snapped up. And that's the big advantage with the American teams riding an international calendar nowadays. It gives riders the chance to get picked up by a top team. To get picked up by Fassa Bortolo for Tom Danielson is an absolutely superb chance for him to show that he is going to be a great star of the future.
Well, this is the breakaway. That's Mario Scirea at the front from Domino Vacanzi. And the riders now still clear of the field, but the gap is slowly coming down. They made a bit of a meal of catching the breakaways yesterday, and I don't think they're going to leave them out that long today. We're heading toward Vendemiano, longest stage of the Giro at 234 kilometres. And as you can see, it's a beautiful day in the far northeast of Italy. Not so in the mountains where the snow is falling. Could be a problem for the end of the week. Let's take a break and we'll see you in a moment. Well, we're looking at the road. These are the four leaders at the front: Scirea, Van Hout, Ginestri and Righi. 70 kilometres from the finish and a glorious day. And I'm glad to see Russell Van Hout in this move. It's for him an important tour. He rode a fabulous time trial. He was a top 8 rider in the time trial, and here he is now in what is going to be a long day up front.
Big chance for Russell Van Hout to break it into the big time. We saw him riding early on in the year in the Tour de Langkawi. But in fact, just a quick check, the only victory he's had outside of Australia was a prologue in the Tour of Greece last year. But this really is his first year into the big time.
Yeah, well, he comes from Tea Tree Gully in South Australia, delightfully named little town. Dyes his hair blonde, wears his earring, and usually goes training with people like Stuart O'Grady when he's back home in Adelaide. And I'm sure the people in Australia will be watching him ride well here too, because very important period in Australia, because on Wednesday the World Track Cycling Championships will be held in Melbourne. They get underway, 15 world titles to be decided by the end of this week. It's a shame really in many ways that the World Track titles coincide with a Grand Tour. Here we keep going in and out of Slovenia at the moment. We're officially back in Italy again, and there's nothing about these little in and outs into Slovenia, but we are gradually getting clear of the neighbouring country.
Interesting to see the front end of the main field. It's again Fassa Bortolo doing the majority of the pacemaking. Interesting insight that we had earlier on with Tom Danielson about the fact that the team was completely and utterly dedicated to trying to get Alessandro Petacchi win number 8. There's a nice study of the pink jersey, Jaroslav Popovic, and he will be wondering in the back of his mind whether or not that big summit of the Gavia Pass will be cancelled because of snow which has blocked the roads. Unlike in France, if it was the Tour de France, they'd have the military out trying to clear that race to get it over the top of the big mountain passes. But here, I think we might well look for a back road around.
The boys from Lambau Credit in the red and white there, they're the teammates of the race leader, Popovic, also doing the honourable thing and riding near the front now with the Fassa Bortolo riders, looking after their team leader. Anyway, let's remind you what's going on Memorial Day, which is Monday, May the 31st. Keep it locked in on OLN, and it's OLN's kick-off to summer. This Memorial Day, OLN previews a full line of a summer programme. It'll include surfing and the feature film Endless Summer Revisited. OLN's kick-off to summer, Monday, May 31st, from 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. right here on OLN. Oh, what a lovely day it is. Hardly a cloud in the sky. What is over across the Adriatic Sea. And these boys try to pull this race back together in the hope that they can once again guide their missile to the line, Alessandro Petacchi, for what would be the most number of stage wins in a Giro since the Second World War ended.
That would be absolutely remarkable. The man who holds the outright record, in fact, was Alfredo Binda, winning 12 stages out of 15, but that was before World War II. But going back to the three men who've actually recorded 7-stage wins in a single Giro, Freddie Mertens, Roger de Vlaeminck and Giuseppe Saroni. The amazing thing about Freddie Mertens, Phil, was when he won 7 stages, it was over the first 8 days of racing, and then he crashed out of the event, so I think he might have won 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, but the fact is it happened to Petacchi, as you know, last year. Let's hope he gets to the finish this time in that points leader's jersey as well. He's clearly the most consistent daily finisher, and that was why they devised the points competition. The Slovenian flag flying there. I'm not sure which country we're in anymore, because we keep going in and out of the borders here. We're just nipping it and then we're going back into Italy now, into Italy right now. So very briefly in and out of Slovenia again, and here we come back onto Italian roads. Boys not stopping at the customs post. I think Slovenia is a recent admission to the common market, so we're all together now. The same monetary unit, the euro, applies on both sides of the border. So here is the Intergiro. We're having a look at the Intergiro here now. We're flashing back to the 60th kilometre, and a win there for Daniele Righi from Lampre. Russell Van Hout taking him on, Mario Schirra in third. In fact, Russell Van Hout, there's been lots of just special points along the route where they have been taking prize money, and Van Hout has won 3 of them so far today. The peloton arriving there for the battle for the rest of the places, 6 minutes 20, and it looks like Damore took that, which means he will keep his lead in the Intergiro competition. That's the first 3. Really, that doesn't really matter to us. It was who came over in 4th place. It was the leader of that competition, Crescenzo Damore, so he'll keep his lead in that. He was equal on time overnight with Marlon Perez. Now he'll be just a couple of seconds ahead of him as we take another break. Look at the cluster of the gears on these bikes, 10 at the back, 2 at the front, total of 20 different gear ratios.
And most of them will be a very close ratio on today's stage because this is a very flat stage. The highest point we reach is 21 meters above sea level, and that's around about 65 feet. And this is one of the long straights down towards the finishing line. These riders who broke away after 34 kilometers of racing built themselves up a maximum advantage of 10.5 minutes. But right now that is slowly but surely starting to come down. The last time check we got was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And Formaggio Pinzoli seemed pretty happy here to be sitting at the back. That was Di Grande. And this team is a team basically without a head here right now because their man Ivan Quaranta abandoned the race some time ago. A little incident just a few moments ago. This is one of the Alessio riders stopping to embrace the family at the side of the road. Very typical scene that we see very often in races like the Giro d'Italia or the Tour de France, when a rider will go past his home. And that in fact was Franco Pellizotti, a man who is well up in the overall classification. He in fact will be looking to ride well over this last week of racing. You can see these big long straightaways now. The main field will have a very good idea of the position of that leading 4-man group, because what they will do is they will try and spot the helicopters that are hovering over the breakaway group, and that will give them an indication, and it will give them a boost to their morale, because they will know they are surely pulling them back into the fold before the finish, when Alessandro Petacchi is once again going to ask his team to lead him out for the possibility of getting the outright post-World War II record of 8 stage wins in the Giro.
4 leaders there for you, and just keeping them in the hope they might survive to the end, but I've got a feeling they're not going to today. The peloton are paying a lot of attention. There was a series of attacks in the opening hour, as there so often is, to try and establish the move. Marlon Perez went clear in the hope he could stay away for the Intergiro, which would have given him the lead for sure in it, but he was heavily marked by Amore, who put him back in his place. And so there's Petacchi. Has a great lead in that Ciclamino competition. He's going to lose one of his rivals to Robin McEwen probably by the end of this day. Olaf Pollock should take him all the way to Milan, but really, barring a big problem like abandoning the Tour, I can't see him losing that jersey.
Pretty scary route for the riders today, because although it's completely flat, the finish in San Vendiamo is right at the bottom of the mountains. Riders like Alessandro Petacchi will be able to look up and see the snow-capped mountains which are right around the finishing area, and realise that his days of sprinting are over. He's going to actually have to change over and put the crampons on and hope to survive over the big mountain stages, because the sprinters still have to try and survive and get themselves down to Milano over the tops of these very big mountains, because there are some pretty tight eliminations over the mountain stages, which for me, Phil, are rather short this year.
Yes, and really, if rumour is right and we do have to withdraw the Gavia from the race route, then there is a possibility that Popovic will feel extremely confident that he can win this race. Anyway, more information about Lance Armstrong. That's what's important for the upcoming Tour de France. OLM will give it to you, of course, part of a series which follows Lance around to document his life as he prepares for the Tour de France. The Lance Chronicles every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, only on ONM. And note the new time, 9 p.m. And by the way, rumour today, in fact we know that Jan Ullrich has just gone over the top of Alpe d'Huez in training. It's a secret, so we thought we'd let you in on it.
Yeah, it was a secret. In fact, the team manager, Rudy Pevenage, was a little bit surprised to find an OLN crew at the top of Alpe d'Huez looking to see exactly what was going on. And all of a sudden the pink jersey came out of the mist, and it was Jan Ullrich, who normally says that he doesn't take any time out to prepare for the Tour de France at the big mountain passes, and he probably thinks that Alpe d'Huez is going to be a serious showdown between himself and Lance Armstrong.
Mind you, as soon as Rudy Peveny spotted our cameras, he was saying, no pictures, no pictures. Because, of course, we would not dream of ringing up Lance Armstrong and telling him anyway.
I've just sent the email.
Ah.
So Lance knows.
There you go. Lance on his way back probably to Spain after a successful last day of the Tour de Languedoc, where Jan Ullrich wasn't among the starters. Looking at the race here, there's the bandage on the elbow of Gilberto Simoni. Very unlucky to crash in Saturday's wet time trials. He made a right-hand bend. Superficial, but it cost him a little bit of time, and it's left him on the defensive now and planning big attacks in the mountains, which will begin tomorrow. But for today, we'll probably keep on talking about Alessandro Petacchi. There's a nice piece of Italian art for you as we head back into the country. 58 kilometres left to ride. Everybody in good spirits today. It'll all change tomorrow when the real battle for final winners begin in the Giro d'Italia. These long straight roads are not conducive for breakaways, but for the time being at least, they are still out of sight, the four riders who got away at around 34 kilometres covered today.
I don't think they'll be out of sight for that long, because right now the gap is slowly but surely starting to creep down, very much to the advantage of Team Fassa Bortolo. And as you can see, the main field starting to stretch themselves out right now as they realise the time is right to pull these four men back into the fold. And if you look at the difference in the speed, these men, they've been away for an awful long time, escaping after just 34 kilometres of racing. I think the pressure of riding the longest stage of the Giro d'Italia this afternoon is starting to pay.
There's a shot for the memory box, as Ginestra has taken up the running now. They're doing quite long turns at the front and give each other as much rest as possible. The three riders riding behind the leader here, Ginestri, saving probably 30% of their energy, and they're taking turns of about a tenth of a mile before they go and have a little rest behind the other riders. Just friends for the moment. The common enemy is behind them at just over 3 minutes and coming pretty quickly right now. They're making full use of what is a very favourable wind now as we return. It was a headwind yesterday, remember, but we're now returning back over the top of the Adriatic. 54 kilometres, albeit a few tenths there. 54 kilometres, Paul, that's too long.
It's too long with the time gap coming down. The last time gap just tickling the 3-minute mark, and you can see the main field are starting to get fairly aggressive as they stretch out into a very long line. In second row there you can see the long line of red jerseys. Those are the teammates of Gilberto Simoni, who now must try and pull himself back into this race. A very bad individual time trial dropped him from second to fourth in the overall classification, but still he has a full complement of riders in his team. He's got a very good lieutenant, Damiano Cunego, who's not too far away in the standings. But these two men are certainly going to count on their teammates when we get into the big mountain passes like Eddie Mazzolini and Gores Stangelai. Moving up, there you can see Julio Perez at the long line, at the end of that long line of brown-orange jerseys. And I think he will be thinking about the possibility of showing the Panaria flag over the next few days in the big mountain passes as well.
Well, Emmanuel Sella, by the way, also Panaria, had that wonderful stage win. The only man that's managed to slip anybody in the race and win alone so far. And he had a bit of a tumble earlier today, but as far as we know, he's okay and got back into the race. Don't forget, keep letting us have your emails. We like to hear your comments, and we also like to have your questions. And I said the difficult ones for Paul and the easy ones for me. There's the address for you, feedback@olntv.com. You can also include Bob Roll. Bob will be back with us tomorrow because he's been over in France watching Lance Armstrong finish off his preparation in the Tour de Languedoc, and we'll bring you a full report over an hour on that programme on Thursday night, by the way. There he is, Sella. We're just talking about him, stage 11 winner, and it was a great day and a great moment for a man who's won 10 amateur races, comes to his first Giro d'Italia and will go home with one stage win.
Riding alongside Freddie Rodriguez. If you can just see number 16 there, that's Freddie. He's very much challenged Alessandro Petacchi on a number of occasions in this year's Giro d'Italia, and he's got himself a stage victory as well. I think he'll be looking to try and outfox Alessandro Petacchi at the end, but he needs to try and out-jump him as he did when he got his stage victory. Surprise Alessandro Petacchi by going out very early on.
Into the next town, and they're very regular racing by the breakaway. They're not panicking. I think deep down they probably expect to be caught, but they've actually won a lot of money out there today. because the towns of Slovenia, or the countries rather, Slovenia and Croatia, have been putting down these spot prizes through the towns and money on the line, and the boys up front have been taking all of the prizes. Russell Van Hout's won 3 of them, I believe. Rigi's won a couple. Shiria got a couple. There was, of course, the Inter-Giro they shared as well. There's the latest gap, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. 3 Italians and an Australian who races on a Colombian team.
See, Robbie McEwen is moving forward there with his riders. This could very well be the last opportunity for Robbie McEwen to get himself a second stage victory in the Giro, because I have a funny feeling tonight, Phil, he might be on the plane out of here heading up towards Belgium, because Robbie too, like most of the sprinters, has a serious allergy when it comes to high mountain passes.
Absolutely right, but of course the last day is for the sprinters as well, and that could be for Pataki, who could push his wins out to 9, providing, of course, he wins today as well. Well, you see, not everybody enjoys the race on OLN. Some get quite bored, in fact. This young lady, she knows she's still got a couple of hours to wait, probably not quite as long as that, about an hour and 40 minutes before the riders course into the finishing line. Now, let's make that an hour and 20. There's the face of the race leader, enjoying another day in the pit. And welcome back. There's the latest time check for the 4 riders up front at 2:23. A little banner supporting Alessandro Pataki. And I think we just switched briefly back to a little look at the presentation podium getting ready for the finish down in San Vendemiano. 51 kilometres to go, or thereabouts, and they're coming back now, Paul. Inside that 3-minute margin, it won't be long.
Slowly but surely, these are the 4 leaders. The man who is in the leading breakaway with them as well, Mario Sierra, is quite a remarkable bike rider, Phil. You know, he turned professional back in 1989, and he's always ridden for top riders like Mario Cipollini. And he's, in fact, over that period, only ever won 2 professional bike races, and one of them was in a long time ago in a race in Florida. It just goes to show that his victories have been spread around the world. Tour of the Americas, yeah.
I was there.
Were you there? You don't remember?
No.
Well, he won a stage, and that was rather an interesting time for everyone, and they thought at that time that he was in fact going to go on to greater things. He was riding for the small Colombian team.
Ah, that's why I don't remember.
Colombia. And he certainly is too tall to be a Colombian bike rider. In fact, the greatest thing he's ever done in his career, he was a world champion at the 100 kilometres team time trial. That was back in 1987. I think that was the last time they had that discipline at the World Championships.
Yeah, it's true. Thinking back to that, Andrea Taffy was the rider who first put an appearance in the Tour Americas, won 2 stages that year, and we all know about Andrea Taffy now. He made his big time. Anyway, we're hearing now, in fact, let's show you this news because it's only just coming through to us. But out of the race has gone Magnus Bagstedt and Piotr Wadecki. Now, that's an interesting thing because Wadecki is a serious pacemaker for Robbie McEwen. Could herald the fact that Robbie is going himself later in the day. Surprised about Magnus Bagstedt, but he hasn't really ridden quite well enough in this race. He had a wonderful spring. As we know, he won Paris-Roubaix. He won the Inter-Giro competition in this race last year. But I've always felt that Maggie hasn't really been enjoying the Giro this year, has he?
He's never really clicked this year in the Giro d'Italia. Let's not forget, though, he had a marvellous spring with his win in Paris-Roubaix. And maybe he too has decided, as the mountains are starting to seriously loom on the horizon, it'd be better part of Valor to move away from the Giro and try and get himself ready for the races later on in the season. 2 minutes and 10 seconds between the 4-man leading group, the Testa della Corsa on the left-hand side and the Inseguitori, the chasers, on the right-hand side. These 4 men certainly don't seem to be really pushing it now, Phil. It's just a question of keeping the tempo going because they know they're going to get caught down towards the end. And I think we will get ourselves treated to another very fast finish. And hopefully Alessandro Pataki will set himself up for win number 8. But waiting in the wings, an American by the name of Freddie Rodriguez will be waiting to see if he can outfox him.
They've got to break into that silver train once it gets working. It's not an easy thing to do at all. If they get control of the bunch, just like in the old days of Mario Cipollini, it's very difficult to spoil their rhythm and ruin their order, because the last run into the line, they use Ongarato, Tossato rather, Ongarato, Velo, and by the time Velo peels off, he should be showing Pataki a clear shot at the finishing line. That's the way it's been working with a great deal of success this year. I mean, to have won 7 stages is incredible, but to win 8 would be the most anybody's done since before the war. Gilberto Simoni, number 1. We heard Tom Danielson on the programme earlier, and he said he's still his favourite to win this race. Well, he's looking for the best part of 2 minutes over Popovic. He's going to have to climb exceptionally well if he is going to win this Tour for the 2nd year in a row.
Going to have to put in some serious attacks over the mountain stages if he wants to try and dislodge Jaroslav Popovic. Let's not forget, last year Popovic rode fairly well, and he's a young rider who is in net progression. 12th in his first participation in the Giro d'Italia, then 3rd. This year now he's already firmly in the pink jersey, and I'm sure that's going through the mind of the man who wears number 1 there, Gilberto Simoni. And let's not forget, he had rather a nasty spill in the individual time trial, and that will take a couple of days to get over.
Well, let's refer back to what I hinted at earlier. The Outdoor Life Network will bring you the Tour de Languedoc, a race which this year replaced the Midi-Libre and gives us a look at some of the Tour de France hopefuls in action, including, of course, Lance Armstrong, who, as we know now, did very well. Tune in to the 2004 Tour de Languedoc, Thursday, May the 27th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on OLN, and that's this Thursday. Our usual cycling night, packed with cycling throughout the evening there. As we are now looking at the men in red, the Seiko boys. Pressure taken off them since Cunego lost his pink jersey, but it's all going to return tomorrow when they'll go one-on-one with the Lambau Credit team for the battle of supremacy in this year's Giro d'Italia. The mountains begin tomorrow. There's the long, thin line. They're saying 50 kilometres to go to the finish. At the current speed, that's about an hour and 6 minutes of cycling. Still is on the roadside in Italy as we continue to race towards the finish. Just 47 kilometres left to go of what is the longest stage today. The average speed been very regular. We started off with 38 kilometres in the first hour. Then the breakaway was clear just towards the end of that opening hour. 39 kilometres in the second hour, 39 in the third hour, and 39 in the fourth hour. A little bit metronomic, but the boys here still clear of the field. Just.
Looking here at Mario Sierra on the front. That's Russell Van Hout, the Australian rider, in second position. These guys right now have been in the lead of this race for 150 kilometres. And they've been riding at an average speed of around about 24.5 miles an hour, which is fairly steady for this long breakaway. But they do now know that the time gap is inside of 2 minutes, and almost certainly they will get pulled in within the next 20 kilometres or so.
Well, last time check we've got is well inside 2 minutes now, so it might even be quicker than that. Because there's Russell Van Hout, does most of his training around the Adelaide Hills in South Australia, which is getting a bit chilly down there at this time of the year. It's their winter, of course, and they'll be looking at temperatures around about 40 degrees Fahrenheit early in the morning. But in January, when he does his final preparations, you can look at temperatures in excess of 100 degrees. Boys in red, there's Gilberto Simoni. Knows what he's got to do to win this tour now, licking his lips in anticipation, I wonder, because you can see his time gap there, 1 minute 27, has put him on the back foot there. He's got to really attack on the mountains, probably tomorrow, to test Jaroslav Popovic. But the big crunch day should really be Saturday, but by then I think he'll want to be in the pink jersey if he can get his hands on it.
I think as soon as it goes uphill tomorrow, he'll be looking for the big attack to see if he can find any chinks in the armour of Jaroslav Popovic, because he will want to try and get that pink jersey back as quickly as possible into the last week of racing, because every day that Popovic keeps the jersey on his shoulders, he's going to build himself up stronger mentally.
It's interesting. Daniel Rigi there seems to ride reminiscent of great Tommy Simpson there with his head on one side. Tom always used to ride like that, and Tom was a world champion, last British world road racing champion. In fact, we had, as we watch the peloton now, indicating the wind coming from the bottom right corner of our screen as we watch the pictures here, and the riders tucking in behind. Just good fast tempo riding, probably around about 45 kilometres an hour just now, gradually hauling in that breakaway, and they should be up, I reckon, about 40 kilometres to go. They should catch these four.
Should pull them back into the fold, but I can't say enough about this team on the front, the silver train of Alessandro Petacchi. They've done a marvellous job on every flat stage of the Giro d'Italia. It's a very clever strategy that I think are picked up from Domino Vacanze. They dedicate 2 or 3 riders to setting the majority of the pacemaking way out from the finish. Always on the front we see Marzio Brusegin, changing places with Massimo Codol, and they ride at a nice long tempo for long kilometres before then picking up towards the finish. Then it's the turn of Ongarato, Tossato, and the last man to put Alessandro Petacchi into orbit is the man who wears number 89 in the race, Marco Velo. What a great name that is for a bike rider, because Velo in French means bicycle.
He's a good rider in his own right, Marco Velo. He's been the time trial champion of Italy, and He's a perfect lead-out man. He's earned a lot of comment from Pataki for the way he's put him in the right position in that last 200 metres. You have to get it so right. If you're just a matter of 50 metres wrong when you launch your missile, then that missile tends to get tired and somebody gets past. And that's what Freddie Rodriguez is going to be hoping. Now, if you're at the tail end of the peloton right now, because of this high-tempo riding, very much team discipline today, isn't it? Faster Bortolo, followed by Lambau Credit, followed by Seiko, followed by all those who hope later to play their part. But the boys right at the tail of the peloton here will now be finding it. See how the line gets a bit thinner towards the bottom? They are probably having a tough time of it right now as the wind keeps them pinned over into that right-hand side of the road.
They certainly are having a tough time. I think Robbie McEwen's probably having a bit of a tough time too, because talking to Hendrik Redant this morning, he actually said that Robbie might not start tomorrow morning. He was not feeling too good. He, in fact, did not sleep very well overnight, and that's probably because of the fact that he started the sprint off yesterday right at the front, riding in the top 10, and then at the end, he was blown away outside of the top 20. So I think Robbie may well be on the decline here at the Giro. Going to take himself away and try and prepare himself for the Tour de France, where he'll come up against his compatriot Baden Cook.
Yes, that'll be one-on-one. In fact, he was 70th yesterday, McEwen. Once he realised he wasn't going to win, of course, he'll just freewheel and gradually drop right down the peloton until they cross the line, which is the way it is. But sprinters can either win or they lose gloriously. So as we continue on now towards the 40-kilometre point, sun getting higher in the sky now, the riders having spent 5 hours in the saddle today, and it should be just over 6 by the time they hit the finish line.
The leading group there, just going through the town of Annone Veneto, which is 41.5 kilometres to go to the finish. That's around about 26 miles. And still the same scenario on the front end of the main field. You can start to see a little bit of movement going up around the outside of the peloton, though, as riders start to set themselves up to be in position for when they really do start to crank up the speed over the last 30 kilometres.
Rider carrying the drinking bottle there was Simone Mascherelli on the Vina Calderola team. That's the team of Stefano Garzelli, who has not really done anything to impress us very much this year. He's got to come good in the next couple of days if he's going to climb up the overall classification from his current 8th position. He's looking for more than a minute, of course, to take the overall lead. It's going to be tough for him, and we'll want some indication tomorrow just as to how well he's going. We'll take a break. Join us in a minute or two.
For Lance Armstrong, the Tour de France is...
And welcome back. The spectators still enjoying the situation here as the race courses towards the finish, and the sprinters still having to fight back and cancel this breakaway of 4. 39 kilometres to the finish of today's stage. A perfect finish for a man of the quality of Alessandro Pataki. But first of all, he needs to wrap up this breakaway.
And also another finishing circuit here at the Giro d'Italia, 7 kilometres around the finishing town of San Vendemiano. And as you can see, a reasonable average speed, considering this is the longest stage, 39.1 kilometres an hour after 4 hours of racing. That's nudging it up to almost 25 miles an hour for this 234-kilometre ride from right in Croatia through Slovenia and then to finish in Italy, right at the base of the big mountain passes where these riders will be heading up tomorrow.
Dominio Vacanzi team car arriving to talk with Mario Scirea, who is in fact the oldest rider in the race. He'll be 40 years of age in August. I think it's unbelievable you can ride at this level at 40. It just shows how well this man has looked after himself since he turned pro back in 1989.
It's a long time, a long season professional. He in fact turned professional with Mario Cipollini back in 1989. Mario Cipollini himself not in the Giro d'Italia anymore, but Mario Cipollini does a crash at the back here. Now this is what happens when you're not paying attention in races like this. A little bit too relaxed at the back end of the group, a touch of wheels, and half a dozen riders have gone there down there very quickly.
Yes, it's Alessandro Vanotti is the rider there from Denardi.
A couple of Denardi riders have gone down. There is Leonardo Giordani as well, the man who was a former under-23 world champion.
Muraglia went for Formaggi. He was the Formaggi rider who was on the floor. It looks as though this one's a little bit hurt. Leonardo Giordani of Denardi, one course just mentioned. Well, they were riding absolutely normally. Somebody touches a wheel and this is the result. Maybe taking a drink, maybe doing anything. Scott Davis is down. He was down on day 1 of the Tour, day 2, first road race stage. Another Australian rider. Well, it looks as though everybody, just one rider's left there, and it looks like it's this rider here, Giordani. No, looks just like he might be getting back on his bike.
He's pretty badly hurt, but these are the worst crashes when you're not paying attention. You know, all of a sudden there's a touch of wheels and you go down very hard, especially when you're riding slowly like this. It's when you're at full speed that the crashes have less of a consequence, because you tend to slide, especially when the crashes are in corners. He'll get up and ride, but he's got a long way to go on his own to the finish, because we're only just inside of 40 kilometres to go to the finishing line. And as you can see, his body is pretty stiff with that accident. Let's see if we can see how it happened. It's the Sonia Duval rider who dropped it in the middle of the bunch, and some of the other riders crashing down there crashed really out of panic more than anything else.
Yes, and there was a second ricochet here, and then the poor old Formaggi rider, he really did hurt himself. That was Giuseppe Miraglia, landed right on his coccyx. Rather a painful fall from a big height there. And that's Miraglia on the left of our picture.
It's a painful injury there, the small tailbone just at the bottom of the spine. If you crack that in a race like this, it really is very painful. And we saw, I think, if we remember back to the early week of the Giro d'Italia, one man got whacked from behind by somebody else's handlebar, and that was Alessandro Petacchi. And I thought at that time he was actually going to pull out of the race. And look at him now. He's equalled the record for the number of stage wins in the Giro.
Minute 38, a time banner coming up, probably 25 to go. It might be 30. He says 40 on there. 40, of course, we haven't gone for 40. 40 kilometres to go for the leaders. That's too far, 25 miles. We're always a little bit suspect about the mileage counts on the Tour of Italy, because they never seem to be quite as accurate as that of the Tour de France. But anyway, they're saying 25 miles still to go. And fortunately, everybody seems back. There's Miraglia stretching out that rather painful fall, but at least he's back in the peloton. That's what happened. This is Miraglia. Ouch. As he went right down on his coccyx.
Bit of panic on the right-hand side of the road there. You can see that's where the crash initially happened. This was the man who I think actually went down first, Alberto Lodo of Sonia Duval. He's got up quite quickly and he's managing to recover, but you can see just how hard it is to get back into the main field now that the main field has started to turn up the pressure just a little bit, trying to pull back that four-man breakaway.
Nice healthy little group this. One or two teammates have come back. This rider, Cerrone, Gianluca Cerrone, he's clearly fallen, number ripped off. Another rider here from Phonak is Nicky Ebersold, one of the most experienced of them. But they'll get back in the peloton. The peloton won't turn the screw too tight, because they'll have heard the crash, and they tend to have the jungle law down there, will help each other, and they'll wait for them all to come back if they can. They're approaching that 40-kilometre banner now, so we're still about a minute and a half, minute and 40 seconds probably since the four leaders went through. There's checkout time at the back of the racing. Everybody is okay.
Well, Pavel Tonkov was involved there. He too is riding up through the main field in the main barrage of cars to get himself to the front. So everybody seems to be back up and riding.
Lamprey bringing back all their team. They've got a couple of good sprinters. If they can take on Petacchi, well, we'll find out as we approach the finish. We'll take another break. Enjoying the Giro d'Italia, 42 written on the computer there of the rider, which is 26 miles an hour at the moment. Still trying to repair the damage at the back from that crash we just had as the peloton reforms. There it is, 37 kilometres to go. The breakaway making the most of the slight hesitation from the field, and they've probably added a couple of seconds rather to their leading group. In fact, they have 2 minutes 12 seconds is the gap as they go into the last 37 kilometres, but it's still not going to work, is it?
I still don't think it's going to change the outcome of what is happening here. That leading group of four will get pulled back into the fold, but as you can see, there's a long stretch of riders out the back end of the main field. We get a chance here, I think, to have another look at how that accident happened. Somebody fell there on the left-hand side of the road, and it tends to ricochet right the way through the peloton, and it's a moment like this when everybody's just a little bit relaxed, somebody else touches their brakes, and several riders go down, and that's all because of the fact that most of those guys were just too relaxed and not attentive.
Well, the pack, there it is. This is a live picture again now as those riders from the crash are slowly getting back into the peloton. A few deep breaths, a few shaking of the legs to get rid of the lactic acid after that chase, and they should be all okay. These are the Formaggi riders as well, so I've got a feeling that Miraglia had that rather painful fall, although he'd be badly bruised there as he now comes back into the field.
A little quick glimpse there. Leonardo Giordani also got himself back onto the tail end of the group. And he seemed to be the worst off in that crash. He went down very hard on the left-hand side of the road. Once again, a huge crowd have turned out for the Giro d'Italia to welcome it back into Italy after an incursion into Croatia and Slovenia. The man on the front, as you said, 39 years of age. He's going to be 40 in August. Sitting in third position there, Russell van Hout. He's been a professional for 3 years now, turned professional back in the year 2000. And almost the whole of that time he spent with this small Italian team, Selle Italia. He's been fairly successful. He's won around about 16 races, none of them big races, mostly races in Australia, but when you're a professional, any win counts as a win.
Absolutely. Sun coming up from the left shoulder. Now these are the riders still in the convoy here, taking time out now. They'll feel pretty safe there, so they'll take time to talk to the team managers, find out exactly what's happening up front, take on a few drinks, because after we get to the 20 kilometres to go sign, there won't be any more drinks passed to the riders. These are very good racing roads for the sprinters, long, flat, straight roads, but not really very good roads for the escapers. As we head up to the next banner here, 25 kilometres to go. Oh, 35 kilometres to go. So that's still a long way to go. Again, these four riders at getting away today at 34 kilometres from the start. So it's been a long way out in front.
Main field starting to stretch once again at the front end, and you can see them picking up the pace. I would say they're riding just 3 or 4 kilometres an hour faster. A lot of business at the back end of the main field. The race doctor being kept very busy this afternoon with riders who went down in that crash just a little earlier. One of the men who went down harder than anybody else, Alberto Lodo. You can see most of these injuries are pretty much superficial when you go down like that, but that is actually rather a nasty bang.
Yes, Alberto Lodo has been quite an aggressive rider in the race. Let's remind ourselves as to the overall situation in the race as we head down towards another day's finish. No change since the time trial. It's still Popovic in pink, third day as leader by the end of the day. Honshaw at 3 seconds, McGee at 1:02. They were the three champions of the time trial on Saturday. Simoni fell off in the time trial. Pellisotti did better than expected, and Cunego felt he rode quite well because he is a very inexperienced bike rider and he's only dropped down to 6th. There's completing the top 12, and Sella, who won a stage, won another young rider in the race, is still holding 12th overall. Belli, the old veteran, and Christian Moreni also regular appearances for them in the top 12 in the Giro d'Italia.
I think over the next couple of days that top 10 is going to change an awful lot with riders moving up and down in the overall places. We will start to see some big gaps begin to appear as we look at the front end of the main field. Once again, this man is remarkable. This is Vladimir Gustov. He's one of the big teammates of Alessandro Petacchi, just sitting on the front end, hammering out the pace, taking a chance every now and again just to look at the onboard computer, which lets him know just exactly what average speed they're riding at, as they too now hit the 35 kilometres to go. These boys have done a remarkable job for Alessandro Petacchi. They just get into this frame of mind that they have to just set a tempo. They don't think about what's going to happen to them in the last 20 kilometres or so. All they want to do is pull back that leading group of 4 riders. It's an unbelievable frame of mind that a domestique has to develop.
Well, the empty road ahead at the moment. Those are the 4 riders, Van Houtschieri, Origi and Ginestri. 2 minutes, so they've started to come down again. They started to pull back a little bit while the field turned off the gas just while those injured riders rejoined. Gentleman's agreement amongst the professionals, and nobody likes to attack a rider who's had the misfortune to crash. And these boys are trying to scurry to the circuit, which is only one lap today of 7 kilometres once we get through. Interesting circuit in the town. Absolutely will suit the hard-working Domino Vacanzi team. Beg your pardon, hard-working Fassa Bortolo team.
Well, they are picking up the pace again. You look at that long line. It really does say a lot for Fassa Bortolo. They have changed over the last couple of days, I would think, to become a superb lead-out team for Alessandro Petacchi. Remarkable job of work being done by these men.
Well, will Freddie Rodriguez challenge? Will Robin McEwen manage to stay up with the front runners in the sprint, or will Petacchi make it a record? Welcome back. The Giro d'Italia gets a little bit closer to the finish, just outside the 30 kilometre to go mark now for these 4 riders who are still clear of the field. The gap, though, is inside 2 minutes now, 1:52. Picture there, one of the riders who's got his souvenirs of this year's Giro, the crash that we saw about 10 or 15 minutes ago. Scott Davis, the Australian, has now got back into the field. I think he's the last man from the crash to rejoin. So we're all back together again. And now they can concentrate on reeling in Rigi, Van Hout, Scirea and Ginestri.
Taking up the second row of teams there, you can just see the team of Landbau Credits, the team of Jaroslav Popovic. This is Lodo, the man from Sonia Duval, who was involved in that crash. He went down pretty hard on his elbow there, and he'll have a difficult time tomorrow when this race goes up into the big mountains. One of the big mountain passes tomorrow goes well above 2,000 meters in altitude. That's pretty close to almost 7,000 feet. So it's going to be a serious day's racing for the top men in the overall classification. It could be the day that sees Gilberto Simoni try to take the stranglehold back on this bike race. He certainly wants to try and win it for a third year if he can. But he's going to have a hard time, I think, Phil, getting rid of Jaroslav Popovic, who's really improved over the last 3 years. Absolutely.
He's going to have to take big time out of him. I mean, early on in the race, when Simoni won stage 3 to the Corno Alascali, he looked unbeatable. And he got the lead, and we thought that was it. He held it for 4 days. Then his teammate Cunego took it off him and kept it for 6 days. And then the time trial didn't go at all the way of Simoni. So Popovic, who hasn't made any mistakes, there's 30 kilometres to go, and has followed the right wheels in the right places, is a very, very serious challenger this year. There's no doubt about that. And we'll just see what the mountains bring, because after so many flat roads, you know, then the riders are going to find a very different body attitude once they get into the mountains tomorrow. Right now, though, they're sweeping into San Vendemiano at the end of 204 kilometres covered right now, 30 kilometres to go to the finish. The last 7 is on the finishing circuit.
Well, that's a very important point you bring up there, Phil, about the fact that they've had a long, hard ride on the flat stages. All of the mountains are concentrated in the last week of racing, but also throw into that equation the climatic conditions, which, as we've seen and heard on the summit of the Gavia Pass, which is still closed because of snows, heavy snows through this winter. If the rain does come down as promised, it is certainly not going to be advantageous to Gilberto Simoni, because he's one of those riders, a climber who has a very low percentage body fat. And when you get into those cold conditions, you just cannot keep the body warm, and that may well go against him this year.
Indeed. I'm just thinking there, Paul, I'm rather surprised that Sergei Gonchar hasn't tried to snick a small time bonus and remove that 3-second deficit, and just so he could say he's worn the pink jersey. But
I'm a bit surprised myself.
Yeah.
But it's not actually led to being that conducive to the teams to get that close. There's been a breakaway the last couple of days when we've got to the Inter-Giro point, and there are only points for the first 3 riders across the line in the overall classification. I'm sure that's in the back of his mind, but he may well be thinking that the possibility could be on one of the big mountain stages to sneak off the front and get a few seconds time bonus away from his compatriot Jaroslav Popovic. The main field now inside of 30 kilometres to go. That's 18 miles. That should be around about 40 minutes at speeds like this.
Let's have a look what speed we're doing. Oh, just hold it steady, Mr. Cameron. I know it's not easy. 42, I think. Looks like it. 42, 26 miles an hour. And that is on the oldest man's handlebars in the race. 39 3/4 years of age. Mario Scirea. And that is a very respectable speed today. I know they've picked up a nice little check wind behind them because they're returning back around the Adriatic coast today. But it is a long way to ride, 234 kilometres, especially at this stage of the race. 16th day of the Giro d'Italia. Rest day this week, by the way, is on Wednesday. And then it's back into the hills again.
Difficult days facing up to the men left in the Giro d'Italia. This is Giuseppe Muraglia. He too was involved in that crash just a little early, but he's back up comfortably in the main field. On the far side is Gabriele Colombo in the Domino Vacanze jersey, the black and white one. He himself has been a great rider in the past. He won himself Milan-San Remo a couple of years ago. A bit of a surprise victory on that occasion, but since then he's always been a top man to look after Mario Cipollini in the big sprints. Cipollini, we still have no news about Cipollini as to whether or not he will be participating in the Tour de France this year. His team have certainly been selected, and it would be a pity to see Mario not take part.
It certainly would. Next stop is Odezzo, which will take us through to the 27 kilometres to go. these two young ladies are waiting for the riders at the finish. That's probably why they're going so fast, I would think, Paul.
Absolutely, absolutely. Picking up the pace to try and get there as quickly as possible. One young lady will be waiting for the arrival of Alessandro Petacchi because his girlfriend has actually been on the race for the last week. She keeps threatening to go home, but Petacchi keeps saying, just stay on, I'll get one more win, and she's been there ever since the first rest day.
It is amazing, and he keeps on winning, doesn't he? Odetzo for the leaders, and that is still full of fight. Scherer is probably the powerhouse of strength there with the experience, encouraging them on. Russell Van Hout, not the experienced rider at this level. And there's Petacchi being cheered on all of the way. Big crowds building now as we race into the last 25 kilometres of the day, which puts us only 18 kilometres from the first passage through the finishing line. And now the Silver Bullets have got themselves right on the front here to try and end this attack. In the uncanny way that big riders always seem to manage, they're just on the outskirts of the finishing town each day in this year's Giro d'Italia. Only on one day have we had one rider finish on his own, and that is Emmanuel Seller, who really did work them over. A very brave attack, and for him on that occasion it worked, and he got his first ever stage win in the Giro. Minute 34 as we race now towards the last 25 kilometres of the day. Soon be a head-to-head again with Petacchi versus...
To make sure that they get to the outskirts of town, and they've still got a lot of firepower with the men who will finally lead out Alessandro Petacchi. And once again, as we get closer to the finish, there is going to be a major battle for the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi, because he will start the sprint and everybody else will line up behind him to see if he does make a mistake. The man who's been very close to him on a number of occasions, Freddie Rodriguez, is well in the front end of the main field. The man with a bit of a question mark is Robbie McEwen, who claims to be slightly tired overnight. He wasn't able to stay at the front end of the peloton yesterday. With about 10 kilometres to go, Robbie was in 7th or 8th position, ideally situated on the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi. And in the last couple of kilometres, he faded to absolutely nowhere. There's the mountains, just in the distance. The race finishes right at the foot of those mountains, and that's a horrible thing to see if you're a non-climber. And those mountains will strike fear into the hearts of many of the men who are much better and much more at home on the flatter stages.
Chocolat Jacques, the new team on the block, coming out of Belgium. And they've ridden a pretty anonymous race, I have to say, and they lost 3 riders very early on. There were 3 men down by stage 6, and we're now on stage 15. This is the regular work being done still by the boys in blue and white. Marcio Bushugin at the front, the mid-term pacemaker. He'll be held by Dario Cioni and by Massimo Codal, and also by Vladimir Gustov. And then we'll move in Ongarato, Sacchi, Velo and Tessato to finish it off, they hope, for Alessandro Petacchi.
These guys are starting to look just a little bit tired, you know. This is a long ride for them from the very start of the race in Genova. They've been on the front for almost every stage so far, setting the pace, trying to pull all of these breakaways back together before the finishing, allowing their man, the man who has become the new king of the sprints in the Giro d'Italia, Alessandro Petacchi, to get himself just one more victory. A little bit more urgency appearing into the pedalling style of those 4 leaders, but they're just stretching out the delay, I think, in getting pulled back into the fold. That's where we're heading to there, San Vendiamo. And I have a feeling as we look at the speed, and this must certainly be the main field at 60 kilometres an hour, that's 42 miles an hour. These guys are certainly stamping out a pretty authoritarian pace.
There's Sacchi on the front now doing his turn as the riders get tired and drop away from the front. The situation, though, is they're approaching now the 15 kilometre to go sign here, Cimetta. So they've knocked off another 5 kilometres of escape, but that's only going to put them a few kilometres now from passing through the finishing line, which they'll go through with 7 kilometres to go. Beautiful skies again here in northern Italy. Very often in this region you can catch some rain, but not so today. It's been a very dry tour, one has to say, but of course we are believed to be heading into some bad weather for the last few days of the race, so let's hope it doesn't mar the situation too much or make it a rather falsified Giro. I don't think it will, but you never know. Seiko on the right there, Lamprey in the middle, and the Silver Bullet on the left.
This is a point of interest as we head into town here, the finishing town of San Vendimiano. In fact, in 2002, this was the scene of the finish of the Giro d'Italia, the Italian National Championships, I should say. The Giro d'Italia has actually never finished in this town before, but on that occasion, Salvatore Commesso got his second Italian championship. So most of these guys will have an idea of roughly what the finish is going to be like, as we know that they're inside of 15 kilometres to go to the finish. That's inside of 10 miles. Salvatore Commesso not riding the Giro d'Italia this year, I think, axing his preparation much more on a participation in the Tour de France in about 5 weeks' time.
Not long now, is it, to when Lance Armstrong will hopefully live his greatest moment out by winning the Tour for a 6th year. And if you missed our comments earlier, an OLN camera team up on Alpe d'Huez today found one Jan Ullrich doing some secret training up there, and they stopped our cameras from taking the shots. So but we know now that he was out there on Alpe d'Huez, so that's where he went. 15 to go for the peloton, and as we pan along the road there are the escapers inside for the first time for over 4 hours, near 4.5 hours in fact. And the man waving his arms is the chief referee. 185 kilometres this breakaway has now been out front.
It's a long breakaway. That's around about 115 miles these riders have led. You can see the face here of the young 10X rider on the front. That's Giancarlo Ginestra, a first-year professional bike rider. But these guys do not care. They are not giving any presents out in the Giro d'Italia, as Vladimir Gustav once again digs into that very big pedalling action that he's got. The organisation is the big blue train on the front end of the main field. The time gap now, I would say, if we looked from the helicopter once again, would be not very much more than about 40 seconds.
That'll give them a little bit of an impetus now. There's the 4 names for you. They got away at 34 kilometres. And now comes the start of the counter-attacks. That looks to me as though it's Angelo Furlan now. Now, where is he situated in the race?
I think he's coming back. This is an incident at the back end of the main field. One of his teammates has stopped for him. He must have had a flat tyre, which is why the team have gone back to look after him and try and pace him back into the peloton. He's a man who has also got a chance of surprising the sprinters, but this will take a lot of a sting out of his legs as he has to try and catch up with the main field.
That's very unlucky to have had the flat tyre, but he's come back okay. But as you say, he'll use energy, and the peloton still all packing behind the Fassa Bortolo boys, but not in too much of a hurry to help them out. There's Pataki just tucked in the bottom right of our screen. 30 seconds the gap now. Leaders on the left, chasers on the right, and slowly but surely this race is becoming one once more as we go into the last kilometres of the day. Once we get to the finishing line, we'll have 1 lap of 7 kilometres to go. It'll be very interesting to see whether Pataki can control this race and become the biggest winner since post-war years. 8 stages in the same Giro. We'll take another break, come back and join us. It's nearly showdown time. The catch of 3 of the 4 leaders. Just moments ago, they've gone back into the peloton, and that's Shiria, Van Hout and Daniela Righi. Giancarlo Ginestri has tried to hold them off just briefly, but not for very long, and he too has now been swept up. So we are all together 12 kilometres from the finish and 5 from seeing the finishing line.
There was a quick glimpse there of Robin McEwen right at the front end of the main field, and you can see that the team of Robin McEwen have decided to take a little bit more attention on the front end of the peloton. He's got all of his Lotto Domo riders there. As we see now, Gruppo Compacto, the whole of the main field is once again together as we come into the outskirts of town. There's a little bit of picture breakup, a slight problem coming from Italy as we fortunately get our photos back as we charge into town. This was the moment when Team Lotto went to the front end of the peloton, came around the corners there, and we're now looking at setting ourselves up for a very rapid sprint down towards the finish.
1 or 2 riders there going the long way round and losing an awful lot of places in the peloton because of it. Sorry about the brief loss of picture there, but we seem to be steady again now as we run down towards the finishing line in San Vendemiano. But remember, still a 7 kilometre lap to go. That makes us 3 kilometres now from passing through the finish. It's always sad when riders who have been out in front for 187 kilometres today get wiped out almost in sight of the finish. They'll be suffering now to hold on to this race right down to the finish. They might even sit up and just try and ride home, but they want to hold as long as they can, because it's an awful long way home when you're by yourself behind the field on the road to the big tour. This is the rear of the peloton now. Again, situation where these boys at the back just want to see the end of the day's stage. They're hanging on while the boys at the front are driving, and it looks to me as though we've got some new pacemakers here in the form of Gerhard Steiner, because they are confident with Olaf Pollock, who is riding an excellent tour, and they're prepared to try and see what they can do for him.
Bit of confusion there now coming for Fassa Bortolo, because they've seen for the first time, I think, in this Giro, other teams coming forward to challenge their lead out. I think the other teams have now realised if they want to beat Alessandro Petacchi, what they have to do is confuse the lead out of his big silver train. Coda del Gruppo, the back end of the peloton, that is certainly a place you do not want to be if you want to win this bike race. Domino Vacanze on the front there, setting the pace, followed by Gerolsteiner. Very big organised lead out by Robbie McEwen's team, as we see this man swinging off the front here from Domina. Gerolsteiner are looking to try and set up the sprint for their man Olaf Polak. 8.8 kilometres to go to the finish, and for the moment no sign at all of Alessandro Petacchi.
8.7 kilometres to go, and now it is all down to the sprint win. And I think you're right, Paul, you've got to get up front and break up the rhythm of that Fassa Bortolo team. That is what is happening. Lotto are taking some confidence, so too is Gerolsteiner. Both have good finishes on the team, and for the time being at least, at a strange time of the race, the Silver Bullet team have been pushed out of the front of the race. We'll just take one more break and then we'll come back and we'll follow the race through to the finish, when McEwen is going to try and take on Alessandro Petacchi. We'll take a break. See you in a moment. Don't forget Freddie Rodriguez either. Meters from the finish of today's stage, and Fassa Bortolo are having to mix the pacemaking now, along with riders from Gerolsteiner.
They won't like that. The way they've succeeded over the last couple of days is by having a complete line of Fassa Bortolo riders on the front end of the peloton. The Gerolsteiner rider there looking over his shoulder to see what the position is of Olaf Polak. Robbie McEwen has been pretty much at the front end of the group as well. He will be looking to try and pounce onto the back wheel of Alessandro Petacchi if he can. And they will try and outwit the man who's been so dominant in this year's Giro d'Italia. With 14 wins to his credit so far this season, he's well up on last year's programme.
And we did catch a glimpse as they came through of the breakaways. Rigi van Hout-Schiria dropping off the back of the peloton. The job done for the day. They'll just ride around now while the hot action is right here on the front of your screens. And as they continue to race here, Fassa Bortolo a little bit disrupted. They've still got control of their sprinter, but there's a few riders now broken into the line. Sorry about the picture breakup. There's nothing we can do about that. It's all to do with the uplinks to the helicopters in the built-up area. But there's Alessandro Petacchi. Nervous moments for the big sprinters. Wegman is the rider in the green jersey on his shoulder there.
Coming up there, Domino Vacanze. They will be trying to lead out their man, Andris Naudus, the big Latvian sprinter. He's been ever present, ever consistent in these sprints. I don't think he's quite got the turn of speed towards the end to surprise Alessandro Petacchi. We've really got to look at men like Robbie McEwen and, of course, Freddie Rodriguez, who will be up there somewhere. But this is appearing to me, Phil, to be the most confused sprint we've had so far as we go inside 5 kilometres to go. Fassa Bortolo are not in control.
No, they're not. They have been in this situation before, and in the last kilometre or so, they suddenly magically appeared with the whole team on the front, so they may hope to do that again. But right now, there's a lot of teams trying to break up this. I think they're probably all a little bit sick and tired of playing second fiddle to one flashing Alessandro Petacchi. This is a bit of a desperate act. This is Nick Gates with his on the right of the picture, and the teammates here too are Freddie Rodriguez. Looking where he is, Freddie's right there. They want to break up this sprint, and I should imagine if we had a sound microphone in that peloton, we will be hearing a lot of riders shouting instructions right now.
I don't think we want a microphone right in there at the moment. There's a lot of things being said that we certainly do not wish to hear, because there's a lot of tension at the front end of the main field. Team Fassa Bortolo have for the moment lost control, but they've been in this situation before, and then in the last 2 kilometres they managed to turn it all around. Looking down that line, you have to look back a long way to see Alessandro Petacchi. There's a rider on the front from in fact, that is a Gerolsteiner, leader of the King of the Mountains classification, Fabian Wegman, making a long turn for his man, who should be a little bit further back in there somewhere, Olaf Polak.
Well, that was Wegman's swan song, a big effort and off and out of it now, and taking up there Nick Gates. A little bit of rush on the outside too, as Fred Rodriguez's team tried to get control of the head of the peloton. This is the most interesting day today, but just watching the centre there, the pink jersey of Petacchi. He's a cool sprinter, he's not panicking, he's been in this situation at least 7 times this year in this particular race, and he's still riding pretty regularly there.
Riding up through there's Freddie Rodriguez there, number 16, looking for a teammate, but a couple of places in front of him you can see the blue jersey. That's his teammate Crescenzo D'Amore. There is Pataki. He doesn't seem to be worried at all about all the battles that are taking place around him. He just sits there, sits on the wheel of his teammate Marco Velo, and allows Marco Velo just to pilot him through. Look at that little bit of aggression there. That's coming to one of the Lotto Domo riders. That's Art Veerhouten, who is fighting to get onto the wheel there of Alessandro Pataki. And in fact, McEwen is a couple of places behind.
Yes, and Crescendo d'Amore was the rider in the blue jersey who just gave him a reminder that he was already in position there behind that wheel. 3 kilometres to go, and one of the riders of Freddie's team has had a rocky passage, disappeared very rapidly on the hard shoulder.
This is a man's sport right now. When you get right up here, you have to have nerves of steel. The best thing to do is keep your hands completely away from the brakes. If your hands start to move anywhere near the brakes on those handlebars, the man alongside you knows that you are about to panic and touch them. But Team Fassa Bortolo have not panicked. They've got control once again. They're in a nice line on the front. There is Olaf Polak in the light blue jersey. Robbie McEwen now moving up. Robbie McEwen on the wheel there of Polak, moving up there as well. Angelo, look at these arms and elbows. Everybody is moving. Freddie Rodriguez seems to have slipped back just a fraction.
Well, we've got the order of fire they wanted, and it's happened outside of the 2 kilometre sign, but now there's a big rush here by Freddie Rodriguez's team to put Rodriguez in the action. And in fact, they're going to take the front here, and they've got Crescendo d'Amore also moving up. This is almost the sprint has begun here, 2 kilometres out from the line. Look at this now. One line on the right, one on the left, and still Fassa Bortolo are keeping control.
Too far out. It's much too far out for the team of Freddie Rodriguez to try and challenge Team Fassa Bortolo. You can see them zigzagging all over the road, but I think they are today actually trying to lead out Freddie Rodriguez. On the left-hand side, it's Fassa Bortolo. On the right-hand side, it's the team of Acqua Saponi. Third man on the right-hand side is Freddie Rodriguez. He's right on the tail wheel there of his teammate Crescendo d'Amore.
D'Amore is obviously the man who's going to lead out, but I think he's going to get him to the front a little bit too soon here. He's going to have to keep this rider on the front as long as possible, otherwise he'll run out of steam here. D'Amore second just around the bend. Rodriguez round on the far side in third place. Pataki has gone through tight on the inside and has moved up because of it. He comes out of the corner, third wheel, and this is very good now.
Now again, you see, look at this Fassa Bortolo. They don't worry at all. Nobody can ruffle their feathers. They let people come round. They let people battle for the wheel of Alessandro Pataki. Freddie Rodriguez there up alongside Pollock. Get off that wheel. I want it. Freddie Rodriguez has got nerves of steel here, but Fassa Bortolo inside of 1 kilometre to go are still in control. There in fourth position is Alessandro Pataki. They're looking over their shoulders. Where is he? He's actually got somebody right in front of him from Saunier Duval.
Well, this is absolutely amazing now because Crescendo d'Amore in the blue there. Look at Pataki looking around, seeing who is coming up towards him again. We can't see Robin McEwen at this stage. It is the Bina Vacanzi team now who are trying to lead this out, surprisingly enough. As we come in towards the home straight now, the last lead-out man for Pataki, still fourth or fifth place. He's going to have to come from the back here now, and he's going to have to watch too he doesn't get hemmed in as the rush starts for the line now. Will this be a record victory for Pataki? And I don't think it will be, because it's going to take them right up to the line. Pataki's holding late, as he always does. Rodriguez is still in the mix here alongside Pataki. Uros Mern is on the far right of the road. Now comes the kick from Pataki, and I think Nazdouche is in there as well. Nazdouche and Pataki coming up to the line. This could be a victory. Now Pataki opens up and hits the line. Unbelievable, this man. He has just set the record for the highest number of stage wins since the end of World War II. I think we almost had World War II just then.
I think we did on the last few kilometres. There was a lot of arms taking place there, moving off the handlebars. The crowd are congratulating this man. Win number 8. This is a new post-World War II record. That is absolutely superb. I couldn't believe, Phil, how calm and collected he was coming into the last 300 metres. There was movement all around him on the left and on the right, and he just waited. He waited for his teammate to open up the sprint. The sprint started very early on the left-hand side, and he knew he had the confidence to wait until the last possible moment. When he accelerated, he knew he had the confidence to get it. And look at that. Once again, what a demonstrative win. He's winning there ahead of Olaf Polak by at least a full bicycle length.
Yeah, I think actually Polak was third. There was a man in there, including Freddie Rodriguez in second. But we'll all come out shortly as we watch the sprint again now. This guy I think he's producing more exciting finishes than Mario Cipollini in his heyday. There's Polak making the rush on the right. It's Nazdouche who's taking him up to the line. And then comes this big kick here and over the line goes Alessandro Petacchi. McEwen also tried to break in on the far side, and it's McEwen who gets through for second. He won't be happy with that as Polak takes third.
Did you see the average speed of that sprint now? Just clocking up 68.8 kilometers an hour. That's 42 miles an hour as he came into the last 100 meters. That is pretty impressive on a push bike.
Well, just hearing the commentator there saying that is a phenomenal result for Alessandro Petacchi, taking win number 8. He can't do a thing wrong. McEwen, Polak, Najdush, Usov, Rodriguez coming in 6th again. Very consistent, Fred, but really this man has a team around him now that puts him in the position. He never panics. He relies 100% on that team, totally confident they will put him in the right place.
Quite an interesting question coming in there from the right interviewer there. The only person who can beat Petacchi right now is Petacchi. He says, well, I'm not sure, I can always make mistakes. He does, as Tom Danielson told us, seem to be a very nice character. He's got not any of the airs and graces around him like Mario Cipollini. He's completely calm and relaxed straight after the finishing line, taking the time to talk immediately after a sprint at 42 miles an hour to the press. That really is remarkable. Look at the way he's got a clean crack at the finishing line here. He has not yet got it wrong at all, and in fact he's broken his little bit of a recipe there, Phil, because he normally wins every 2 stages. Now he's won 2 back-to-back.
Unbelievable. He's now won 15 races this year, and that's his 8th in this year's Giro, 14 in all, but he won 30 races last year, so he's actually up on his race win schedule because he's won 3 more races at this time of the year than he won last year. Anyway, the race is over, but the presentation isn't. Come back and rejoin us, and we'll bring you right up to date with today's stage of the Giro d'Italia.